Arrogance and greed. Greed and arrogance. That's what I want to talk to you about today. Two very powerful human emotions. And by God, do I have a lot of both. Greed. Well, I learned greed at a very early age. I could never resist another slice of cake. And none of us in this room, or indeed any of us anywhere, could not admit to having greed as quite a strong emotion in our makeup. The other emotion is arrogance. Well, I learned a lot of arrogance at boarding school. It was a German school, mainly German pupils. The masters were all German. So you can guess where I learned my arrogance from. They thought they were the greatest. And that's where it came from. In fact, have you ever wondered what it means when you have a company called Volkswagen AG? You can guess what that stands for. Arrogance and greed. Two wonderful emotions. Well, today's talk is a true story. It actually did happen. And it concerns greed and arrogance. It concerns three very powerful men, three very large companies indeed. This took place in three places on this planet, and it happened about 3 years ago. But let me set the scene. The three powerful men I'm talking about belong to three companies. First of all, Texaco, TX, and the guy's name is Mr. McKinley. Mr. McKinley was the chairman of Texaco, a man of about 54 years old. He came from Louisiana. He was a chemical engineer, and he was very strong character indeed. He was a real autocrat. The other guy is a Mr. Lightka, Hugh Lightka, is the chairman of Pennzoil. He was almost the same as McKinley, a very strong character indeed, another autocrat. The third man was quite different. His name was Gordon Getty. Gordon Getty at that time in 1987 was the chairman and indeed the owner of the Getty Oil Company. These are the three men, these are the three companies. And this little story takes place in three places, and we'll go through them in a bit. And the overlying problem was oil. It's caused so much trouble on this planet, it will do for a very long time, and it's a very powerful thing indeed. The problem was that McKinley needed oil. His geologists were just not doing a good job. They'd spent millions of dollars trying digging up or making dry holes all over the place, and McKinley decided the best way to do this was to buy oil on Wall Street. And he was looking all over the place to try and do this. Gordon Getty, you had a lot of oil. They had large reserves, particularly in the US of A. Ideal candidate for takeover. Gordon Getty really wasn't too interested in business. He, like me, liked Puccini. He liked the arts. He was a very emotional man, Mr. Getty. So, Mr. Lightka, perhaps being the most domineering of these three people, found out first that Getty was for sale. Gordon had gotten bored with the whole business. So Mr. Lightka made an appointment with Mr. Getty and had breakfast with him in San Francisco one Friday morning. Well, They had breakfast, and I don't know what they talked about. I wasn't there. In fact, nobody else was there at all. Just Leitka and Getty. And in the course of this breakfast, Gordon Getty shook hands with Hugh Leitka, the chairman of Pennzoil, and sold Getty to Leitka. Just like that, just on the strength of a handshake. And in our business world, a lot of things are done like that. You don't need a contract. You just shake hands. Well, Texaco is a very large company, and at that stage it moved with a geological pace. It was a very slow-moving company indeed. And McKinley was alerted about this breakfast on the Saturday morning. So he thought, my God, all this oil is going to slip out of my fingers. So he got on the phone to Gordon Getty and said, Gordon, have lunch with me today. This is a Saturday, the next day. And he flew across from his headquarters in New York to San Francisco. And they had lunch. And again, there was no one else present. There are no notes. It just happened that he managed to persuade Gordon to sell the company to him. So we had a situation where Mr. Leitka had offered $9 billion for Getty on the Friday at breakfast, and Mr. McKinley, our chairman at that time, offered $10.5 billion for Getty Oil. Very large sums of money indeed. No one took notes. No one really knew what went on. McKinley and Getty shook hands. A deal was made. Only one problem. The deal had been made twice. And of course, this is no good.
5 minutes.
Mr. Leitka found out, and he was furious. As you can imagine, he was hopping mad. So what did he do? He sued Texaco. He took us to court, and boy did he ever clean up, because he arranged to have the trial heard in Houston, his home ground, where he had the judge paid off, he had the jury paid off, he had the whole thing fixed. As a result, we took a bath in a major way. The jury found against us. We found there were 3 disgruntled Texaco employees on the jury. They found against us the tune of $12 billion. The largest judgment in the whole history of business on the planet Earth. And this meant that Texaco was in bankruptcy. The 4th largest company in the world was in bankruptcy. We went in Chapter 11. Serious stuff. For the next year, we were in bankruptcy for about 12 months. Bad situation for us employees. We just went from one copy of the Wall Street Journal to the next. We didn't really know what was going on. All our invoices were being factored off. We were in bad shape. At long last, these 2 arrogant men got together, McKinley and Leitka, and agreed on a compromise. And the compromise was that McKinley would settle for $3 billion, cash. This was done. The Getty assets were sold off. I don't think both parties shook hands on the thing. The lawyers drew up an agreement, and it became history. Now let me bring you up to date. What's happened? What happened to McKinley? We fired the old guard. I hope it becomes a case history in Henley one of these days. I'd like to see that guy interviewed myself. He put all our careers in jeopardy. He was fired. But he got a colossal payoff. Leitka is still the chairman of Pennzoil, a very successful company with a huge cash mountain, as you can imagine. And they're now looking to acquire other companies. Gordon Getty, I guess he's playing the piano in San Francisco. And I suppose that he really came out of it best of all, insofar as he had led a very quiet life. So that's the story. Greed and arrogance, qualities we all have. But these 2 men, McKinley and Leitka, had it in abundant quantities.